Hello, and welcome to the 2020 Historic Savannah Foundation Preservation Awards. I'm Josh Brooks, the Chair of the Board of Trustees for HSF. This year our presentation will be online. We hope you enjoy these awards. Despite the current pandemic, HSF's work continues. Through our revolving fund and our Architectural Review Committee, we are committed to the preservation of our community and its historic structures. The Davenport House has found a way to safely welcome visitors back to its museum and has led the way for other museums in our city and region to do so as well. HSF continues during COVID to preserve this great city, its history, its legacy, and its culture. We cannot do it alone though. Every year we come together to congratulate and thank the individuals who make it their mission to preserve this city through their individual projects. We want to thank everyone who submitted awards this year. The awards were broad and all are equally important to the preservation of our community. We want to thank you for your continued efforts. All our applicants were amazing examples of well-done preservation work, but in the end, our judges made the difficult deliberations using our three criteria: quality and degree of difficulty of the nominee's project or effort, degree to which the nominee's project or effort is unusual or pioneering, or serves as an example that influences good preservation practices, or demonstrating measurable impact of the nominee's project on the community. We'd like to thank our great judges, Shanna Copeland, Ryan Jarls, Holly Kincaid, and Sabrina Cox for lending their expertise in choosing these awards. We'd also like to thank our generous sponsors. Now I'd like to introduce Sue Adler, our CEO and President here at HSF. Sue will be presenting the awards. Thank you again for joining us and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Josh, for that wonderful introduction. It is now my pleasure to introduce this year's 6 award winners. They have all done so much for our city through their work. And now, without further ado, here are our spectacular winners. Our first winner is the rehab project at 15 Medin Drive, the Fort Screven Enlisted Men's Barracks. Our congratulations go to Brent Watts at Cabretta Capital, Josh Ward at Ward Architecture and Preservation, Anthony Consul, General Contractor from J.K. Homes, and Sarah Ward, Preservation Consultant for Ward Architecture. Together, they transformed this property. The barracks were built in 1910 to house the men at Fort Screven. The building was originally designed to house 109 men. In 2017, a project to modify the building was underway, which would have altered many of the character-defining features that were left in the building. Mr. Watts stepped in at this time to purchase the property and rehab it, saving these important architectural features from permanent loss. Following the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation, this project successfully applied for and received tax credits. The building was brought back to its colonial revival style. The original slate roof, large ventilation shafts, and decorative vents were retained and restored. The boarded Palladian window opening in the center gable was restored and reopened, matching those remaining on side elevations. Original interior stairs and spaces were restored, leaving the original exposed structural supports visible and intact. The most significant undertaking was the restoration of the 2-story, full-width front porch. The infill was removed, revealing all of the original wood siding on the covered front facade. Historic images, elevations, and existing materials were used to reconstruct the columns and rails, restoring the open porch to its original design. In 2019, the building was completed into a multi-family residence. The once hidden building now stands prominently as the last remaining example of an enlisted men's barracks in the Fort Screven National Register Historic District. Congratulations to this wonderful project and all who worked on it. Together, they transformed this property. Our next winner is from the National Historic Landmark District. This contributing building was originally built in 1890. The structure has served as a private home, a radio station, and a realtor's office. In 2007, a rehabilitation was started and never completed. The building was left vacant and empty for over a decade. The initial rehab removed much of the 20th century building material before the project was stopped. In 2017, Heath and Elizabeth Shelton and the Habersham LLC purchased the property and restored it to a single-family home. Rehabilitation efforts focused on restoring the original appearance of the building, replacing missing features and materials to match the original as closely as possible, while expanding the interior space into the attic. Interior walls, ceilings, and trim were missing due to the halted renovation. Designs for new features were sensitive to and compatible with the historic character of the building. Ward Architecture and Preservation was able to find historic photos of the property, helping to restore it to its Victorian appearance. Many 1970s additions were removed and historically correct features were added, including pocket doors, custom trim work, and the removal and replacement of the non-historic front entrance. Our congratulations to Heath and Elizabeth Shelton of EH Fortitude Inc., Jonathan Leonard at Swayer Design Studio, and Sarah Ward at Ward Architecture and Preservation for this tax credit receiving property. The 130-year-old townhouse, late Victorian duplex in the Queen Anne style, is an asset to its district and our city. The iHeartRadio transmitter building story is a little bit fuzzy as we don't know the exact date of its origin. We assume it was sometime between 1939 and 1944. But what we do know is it was a great restoration project, and that is why it is one of this year's winners. This building has held a radio transmitter from the day it was built, and the original one is still in it now. The building was purchased by iHeartRadio Company, and the preservation was done by Scotty Snipes with SCH General Contractors. In 2019, it was determined that the siding on the building needed to be replaced, and the decision was made to bring it back to its original concrete and terracotta. The old building was hidden behind the painted cedar siding. As they began to peel back the siding, the original design began to reveal itself. The building is a massive concrete and terracotta structure with clean, straight, mid-century lines and a smooth stucco finish with glass block windows and call letters built into the terracotta walls. There was a lot of work which needed to be done to the building, as it was uncovered during this process. The stucco was cracked and deteriorating. A man previously associated with the building stopped by one day to see the progress. The restoration team had just discovered the diamond medallions on the front of the building had once been painted. This man knew that the paint was radio tower paint. After further examination, it was confirmed that the paint was in fact radio tower paint. A great example of how important community input can be to a preservation project. The before and after pictures of this building are perhaps one of the most dramatic of this year's winners. We at HSF appreciate the teamwork that went into this project. Congratulations go to iHeartRadio and Scotty Snipes. Our next house may look familiar to many of you. In 2017, the Berrien House won a preservation award. This year, the house is back again to win its second award for the wonderful job done on the interior restoration. The house was built in 1791 and now is owned by the original family, as Andrew Jones purchased the property, and he is the great-great-great-great-grandson of John Berrien. Everything in the house that could be restored was, and anything added was done with the utmost care and documentation towards the historic integrity of the building. The ballroom, withdrawing room, and center hall were restored to look period appropriate, while other parts of the home, which have modern amenities, took special care so that the original finishes would go seamlessly with the new technology, emphasizing the historic integrity of the house even while incorporating modern pieces. The building now serves as a residence for the owner, space for guest entertainment, and houses a bank on the bottom floor. Great craftsmanship and attention to detail went into the restoration of this project. Though it may appear as though it went off as smooth as can be, there were many challenges along the way, which Omega Construction handled with great attention to historic detail. Congratulations to Todd Mayo with Omega Construction, David B. Kelly, and Andrew Jones for the restoration done on this downtown jewel. The Caretaker's Cottage was built in the late 1890s, specifically for African American laborers, by Peter Wiltberger Meldrum, a former mayor of Savannah, Superior Court judge, and state legislator. The building had been neglected for many years, and many of its contemporaries had been torn down, leaving it as the only remaining cottage on Meldrum Row. HSF and the City of Savannah also partnered on the rehabilitation of the Meldrum Row Caretaker's Cottage. In 2014, the city selected the site for its new Mid-City Police Precinct, necessitating the demolition of 2 blocks of housing, which at the time were located in a narrow gap of unprotected buildings between 2 local historic districts. HSF strenuously objected to the demolition, but ultimately were only successful in saving the Caretaker's Cottage with a $50,000 pledge toward its rehabilitation. HSF even purchased 4 salvaged fireplace mantles for the house, since the originals had been removed and covered up many years ago. All leftover money was put in a maintenance fund for the house's long-term upkeep. In return for the financial assistance HSF provided, the city donated a conservation easement on the property, granting HSF design oversight of the exterior facade for the next 10 years. HSF kept a vigilant eye on the property during the recent rehab to ensure the highest preservation standard was followed. The structure was in need of immediate stabilization. The roof was failing, there was water damage, rot on the exterior, roof brackets were broken and missing. All boards had to be primed, all seams had to be caulked and painted, and brackets had to be milled and replaced. The understructure had termite damage. All masonry piers had to be repointed using matching hydraulic limestone material. 2 new porches were constructed. A rear addition had to be demolished and reconstructed. The interior walls had to be taken down to their studs. New plumbing, HVAC, and electrical were added. They were able to refurbish 4 historic mantles with the help of HSF and the Savannah Technical College, and each was reinstalled in the house. This building was in great danger before it was acquired by the City of Savannah. It's a great example of buildings that seem far gone that can be preserved if put in the right hands. Congratulations to Brandy Davenport, John Clegg at Barnard Architects, Brunson Construction, and Savannah Construction and Preservation, the Savannah City Police Department, and the City of Savannah on their incredible work. Our final Preservation Award winner is not one, but a collection of buildings on West Broad Street, built between 1910 and 1922. Once a vibrant urban block with a fine-grained urbanism that served as the hub of Savannah's African American business community, with a diverse mix of small retail uses, the block went into a cycle of decline with the demolition of Old Union Station, the dismantling of the surrounding urban neighborhood, and the displacement of its residents and the construction of the I-16 flyover. In 2015, the majority of the block was purchased by a new owner. The historic lot lines were immediately replatted, restoring 9 individual street addresses that had been consolidated into one, and allowing the block to return to its historic diversity of uses and ownership patterns over time. Traces of the block's rich history, including numerous painted signs from the many decades of Thrifty Supply Center, as well as a historic Eisenman's clothing store sign, were uncovered and preserved. Exterior facades were painstakingly restored. Replacements for pressed metal facade details that had been deteriorated beyond repair were sourced from the original manufacturer, while the majority of the facade details were restored in place. All of the exterior storefronts were restored along the 3 primary street fronting blocks. The interiors were restored as individual retail and upper-level office uses, and are now in the process of being leased to new tenants who will re-enlive this once blighted block. The project participated in the Historic Tax Credit Program, and the restoration was overseen by the State Historic Preservation Office. The humble mercantile buildings of the 300th block of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard are not high-style historic architecture, but rather vernacular fabric buildings that represent a significant part of Savannah's history that has been largely lost due to the excesses of the misguided 20th century urban renewal. The current restoration has rescued them from the very real possibility of loss due to neglect and returned them to active uses for the purpose for which they were originally created. Congratulations to West Broad Street for bringing back an essential part of Savannah's history. Thank you to all our preservation winners for all you do to preserve our wonderful city. And now I'd like to introduce Ryan Arve, HSF Director of Historic Properties and Preservation. He will be announcing the Advocate and Volunteer of the Year Awards.
I'm pleased to be with you today to present the Nicola Parker Coe Volunteer Award. During her 15 years of employment with Historic Savannah Foundation, Nicola worked with countless volunteers and developed a real appreciation for the value that each volunteer brought to the organization. Nicola knew that HSF was only as good as its volunteers. That's why I'm honored to celebrate Nicola's undying spirit and dedication to HSF by presenting this year's Volunteer Award to Chris Hendricks, who has given so much time and passion to Historic Savannah Foundation. Chris's commitment to the Davenport House has been unwavering over the past few years. Chris is an esteemed professor of history at Georgia Southern University and still has found time to help out the Davenport House since the 90s. He and his mother's cookbook, Old Southern Cookery, is a tremendous work of historic research, and they have decided to donate the proceeds from this book to HSF. The cookbook is an updated version of Mary Randolph's The Virginia Housewife from 1824. Along with recipes, it gives historic information on the subject matter. When he can, he always brings his students to visit the Davenport House. He advised on a master's thesis that has helped the Davenport House better understand its own history with slavery. Chris is always available to help when asked. His donation of his cookbook and the proceeds is admirable. And for this, we thank him for his commitment to HSF and the work that we do. This year, the preservation community lost a great advocate and dear friend in Emma Adler. Beginning in the 1960s, Emma was an integral part of Savannah's preservation. Without her, our city would look very different today. Her great spirit will be immensely missed by everyone at the organization and all those who knew her. Her memory will forever be around us through her work to save this beautiful city. I would now like to introduce Emma's granddaughter, Meta Adler, to tell us more about this amazing woman.
The Lee and Emma Adler Award for Preservation Advocacy was established in 2013 to honor their vast contributions in the field of preservation in Savannah. My grandparents fought for the preservation of this city beginning in the 1960s. It is large part because of them and others' work that we have this beautiful, historic, and iconic city to call home. They worked in the community with the Historic Savannah Foundation and local government agencies to implement preservation laws and education. Emma worked tirelessly in the preservation of the Massey School and was a founder of Georgia Day, among many other accomplishments. This award is bestowed upon an individual who HSF believes carries on the legacy of advocacy. This award is not given every year and is only awarded when it is felt that an individual truly deserves the title of an advocate. It is an award saved for the greatest champions of this city, given in honor of two of the greatest champions in the preservation community. And now, to introduce the winner of the Lee and Emma Adler Preservation Advocacy Award is Ryan Arve.
The definition of a Renaissance man is one with many talents, wide interests, and a mastery of several subjects. It is an apt description of this year's winner because of his breadth of knowledge and experience. Not to mention the fact that he spent most of his career prior to moving to Savannah teaching and studying Renaissance art as a professor at Syracuse University. This year's winner is both literally and figuratively a true Renaissance man. Gary Radke is an integral part of this organization. He has been involved at HSF for many years. A devoted father and grandfather, he still finds an immense amount of time to advance HSF's mission. He is even known to take time out of his vacations to answer a call. And for that level of dedication, we cannot thank him enough for his service to HSF and our community. During his years of involvement, Gary has served on many committees, most notably as the chairman of the Architectural Review Committee. The ARC, as we call it, reviews all historic rehab projects, as well as new construction in Savannah's local historic districts, and makes informed recommendations to the Planning Commission's 2 review bodies. He has spoken on our behalf numerous times at these hearings, and always represented us with his thoughtful and articulate manner. Recently, he completed the first official audit of revolving fund properties. Thanks to him, we now have an account of all the properties that have been purchased and sold through HSF's revolving fund since the organization's founding. He serves on our building committee for the expansion of the Kennedy Pharmacy. He is heading up our content committee for HSF's Future Preservation Center. He is always ready to volunteer whenever the organization needs help, even answering the call early on a Saturday morning to assist with the cleanup of our newest revolving fund property. Gary's knowledge of architecture and his love of Savannah are an invaluable asset to Historic Savannah Foundation, and for that, we are pleased to recognize Gary Radke this year.
Thank you so much for joining us on our first ever virtual presentation program. To our winners, congratulations. HSF relies on its advocates and preservationists. Together, we preserve this city. It's certainly been a year of change, but the work of preservation remains important and ongoing. Despite the fact that we've had to change our day-to-day operations, HSF continues to be here for you to serve you in this community. To our friends, members, and donors, thank you for your unwavering support during this unprecedented time. To continue our efforts, we need your support. Please consider donating today to help us keep Savannah culturally rich and historically significant. It's through our donations from our generous sponsors like you that we can do our work. Despite this difficult time, our community continues to grow. HSF needs your support now more than ever. We ask if you can to donate to us today so that we can help everyone in this community preserve our collective history. Information for doing so is available on this webpage and also at any time on our recently relaunched website. There you can also learn more about our work, its importance to the city, and other ways you can get involved with our organization. We at HSF wish you a safe and healthy fall. Thank you again for joining us.